Hey everyone, Adrian here. Welcome back to the Conversations with Adrian podcast. Today I'm joined by Elise Micheals. Elise, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I've been watching you from afar. I've been stalking your Instagram for probably about a year, I would say. And I'm really, really loving your content, particularly when it comes to relationships and men and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to really deep diving into a lot of your work. But I'd personally love to know how you sort of fell into coaching and what was the sort of catalyst to all of that. Was there a moment in time or something that kind of made you feel like this was your calling and your thing to do?
Yeah, so I took a lot of courses to just heal my own trauma. I was struggling in a relationship a lot, and I said, I have to figure this out. And so, after I really discovered a lot about how the brain worked and that there is a very strategic way to solve pain and trauma, I just started sharing that content on LinkedIn and felt like like, if I can save other people time, I'll do it.
Yeah, great. Did you always coach with men?
I did not. I was actually trying to be a women's coach,
Yeah, really.
and it was only men that reached out to me, and then that's when I realized how little support men actually had. And I
Yeah.
just said, wow, women have so many people and men really don't. So like, I will be that person for men. And I started studying their problems, the trauma that they went through, and how they like to learn.
Mhm.
And it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, I really like that. I think there's a lot to be said about having a female perspective that a man can kind of get insight and intel. Would you agree?
I mean, that's what people tell me. Right? I just go with what people tell me. I can't be the observant.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. But I mean, you must get some response from like men to say like, what is a female's perspective? And I think that like to have an angle from the feedback that you get from men in terms of their troubles and challenges and things like that, but then offering your female perspective, I think would be a good thing to reflect on. I personally, in my own coaching, I think it's nice to know your experiences from both sides, but I really think the dynamic will work personally like really well, in my opinion.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of men feel validated because of my content because they haven't heard this perspective from a woman. So I'm super glad that my content can bring that part of healing to them as well. I mean, I
Mm,
love working with men, so it's
yeah.
great for me.
Yeah, good stuff. What do you think what's the most what are men mostly challenged with these days? Is it any one particular thing, or what do you think men are sort of facing at the moment?
I think there are quite a few challenges. They are questioning what masculinity means to them. They question their ability to be vulnerable, especially in front of women, because they feel like a lot of people just don't care. And so, right now, what I'm seeing with men is they're really struggling to break the dynamic in the mold that they have grown up around and challenging a lot of belief systems, especially when it comes to feminism and the roles that masculine and feminine play. Like that's a huge, huge topic of conversation that's going on in this world right now.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting lay of the land at the moment because you have, in my perspective, in the last couple of years, you have this sort of shift with, I guess, languaging around masculine and feminine dynamics or masculine and feminine energy. And probably for the last maybe 10 or 15 years, there's a real sort of push towards men being in touch with their emotions and in touch with their feelings. My perspective is that it's kind of done this sort of like the pendulum's really swung so like too almost too far, and this is probably just an excerpt from my own experience, was that you really got in touch with your emotions, you were vulnerable, you were able to express yourself in a certain way that would allow you to feel like you could at least identify with your emotions and the things that you're going through, so you had a partner that could listen to, I guess, your situation, your problems and things like that. But I think what is a really interesting part of the male masculine feminine energy is that it flips the male into a almost like a feminine energy to express himself and be vulnerable and be expressing his emotions, but then the female almost turns from into a almost like a masculine energy and starts solving problems and taking the lead, and like the men sort of like become a little bit too sort of like into their emotions. Is this making sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're getting confused as a society with that as well, because when there's always an extreme in the pendulum always is going to from one extreme swing to the other extreme before it finds balance. That's
Mm,
just the law of physics, right? Like it doesn't just stop in the middle. It doesn't just stop at complete balance. It has to go with the momentum of where it's already going.
mm,
So when we look at men and women, both of them were completely held back in each of those areas. Women were held back in a lot of their rights, in their ability to have leadership, in their ability to work for themselves, in their ability to do anything. And men were held back in their ability to be nurturing, to be caring, to share their feelings, to get in touch with that. But both genders have those capabilities. So now that they've both kind of been unlocked, both of them are swinging in the opposite. And I think soon we're going to find a total equilibrium. But a lot of people are trying to find equilibrium by completely swinging the pendulum the other way again. They're like, oh, men shouldn't actually share their emotions now because the women don't like it. It's not like that. It's just that we're doing too much. Like both sides are doing too much. Women are bossing up too much, and men
mm.
are crying too much. It doesn't mean don't cry at all. It doesn't mean don't share your emotions at all. It's just like we have to find a balance. Both men and women have to find a balance within themselves, and then they will find that within each other.
Yeah.
Does
Well,
that make
let's
sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to sort of flesh that out a little bit because I'll sort of speak from my own experience, and then hopefully you can sort of draw upon your experience and then how you coach around this, because I think it creates a fair bit of confusion from the male's perspective as to what to do. I think as men, we kind of like to be less intuitive and more kind of like just tell me what I need to do to fix the problem. And so there's a kind of balance between all of that, because I know that from female perspective, they would like, I just want you to solve the issue, and but I'd like you to take the lead in sort of initiating, what that solution may be. I mean, we can talk it out and we can sort of have an idea of where we're going, but I think that's sort of created a little bit of confusion in the sense of, like you were alluding to before, there seems to be like this sort of stoic thing of just bottle your emotion, not bottle your emotions up, but deal with them like a man and just, plow through stuff and all the rest of it. So it creates this detachment. So I think the first thing I'd love to you to talk to is, I guess that sort of that dance between a man leading and knowing what to do and tapping into his intuition, and at the same time not being saying like, just tell me what I need to do so I go and do it. And then all of a sudden, you're my boss sort of thing, and giving orders. And now like you're the pendulum swung again. You're back to the masculine, the feminine holding onto that masculine role, and then the male just doing what he's told. You with me?
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing that's probably going to be triggering for a lot of people. Like, if you're just looking for someone to tell you what to do, you're not being a leader within yourself, right? It's kind of like a scapegoat. Like, I don't want to have to cognitively think about what this person might need or what I should do next. So I'm just going to ask them to tell me what to do. It's kind of like a people pleaser, a little kid mentality to get rewarded for doing something right, for doing something good. And this is how men are brought up. It's like, just do this thing, get it done, fix it. And then you kind of like get a good boy. You get like a pat on the back, or you don't get yelled at. It's like the absence of punishment, right?
Yeah.
Um, when you want to be a conscious man, when you want to be a true leader, you must learn to lead yourself first, and other people follow. Leaders don't tell other people to follow them. They are so much in their essence and so much in their assurance that people naturally want to go with them. When you are in your own dynamic of leading, it also doesn't mean you don't ask for the opinions of others. You say things like, what is your perspective here? What do you think that we should do? Or like, what is your feedback on this? Things like that. But ultimately, you are thinking ahead with your own, mental ability for the decisions that you make. and allowing yourself to be the guide, not putting pressure on someone else. Just tell me what to do. Like, so there's so much mental load in that for somebody else to have to constantly tell you what to do. You push your partner into being your mom, and nobody likes that.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly right. Then the further you go down that hole, the more you're in that sort of mother role and just being a good boy. Like you said, it's almost
Yeah.
like
And what mother, unless they're incestual, is attracted to their child,
yeah.
right? So you push your partner into a mother dynamic and then you wonder why you're not having sex. And
Mm,
it's this crazy thing. And then in your mind, you're like, but I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything she told me to do. Well, she's now your mom. Your mom doesn't want to fuck you. So why would your wife want to fuck you if you've pushed her into a mom role? That's
mm,
crazy. So you have to start thinking about it like that. It's not like you now have to boss your wife around or your partner around, like, do what I said, because now you become a dictator and a father.
yeah.
It's like, think about your spouse as your partner, your collaborator, but ultimately know that you have the self confidence to make a good decision. And she will see that confidence. And then it's like you've leveled out the playing field. And now she can be attracted to you again because you've taken out the parent dynamic.
Mm. Yeah, and it starts with sort of little decisions, like how when you're coaching your clients in terms of they've fully gone into that sort of mother role and trying to etch out of it because initially it's kind of hard because you're rocking the boat, so to speak, so you start to make a stand with a few things or maybe take some direction, but it's not well received. It's almost like, this is not what I'm used to. I'm used to telling you what to do and all the rest of it. So like to change that within a relationship is super difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible because chances are, if you're that kind of person who has started off the relationship, tell me what to do, you've partnered in that dynamic, right? You've co created this relationship where she's the mom and you're the son, and that's how it works, right? It's people pleasing, it's codependency. And
Mm,
so if you're in this dynamic now trying to change the rules of this container and your partner is not on board, that's how men lose a lot of their partnerships, or that's how they say it doesn't work or they had negative feedback. Of course you did, because you partnered with someone who was not healthy in the first place. You weren't healthy and they weren't healthy. So
mm,
how do you expect them just to magically accept these changes that you're doing? It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means that you are now growing into the person you want to become and seeing if they're going to grow with you or if they can no longer fit in the dynamic that you're creating.
yeah.
And that's hard for a lot of people to accept because sometimes it's in marriages and sometimes that might mean divorce or like loss of custody. And a lot of people don't want to do that. So they sacrifice their sovereignty and their manhood in order to stay in a relationship that they got in when they were not aware, they weren't self aware enough.
Yeah. That is so true and so common. I think there is a risk and a sacrifice that needs to be made when you're making that decision, and it comes at a cost. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think the payoff in your own mind, like I'm a dad, I've got three kids, right? So, um, is that you then buy yourself back, as in you reinvent this man that you sort of lost along the way and kind of fell into the trap that of losing your identity. You almost like abdicated that to someone else to tell you what to do and where to go. And I wear the pants in the family. She tells me what color and what size, and all that sort of stuff. So you kind of lose your identity. But I think the payoff for the man is that you buy yourself back, and all of a sudden there's a new version of you that emerges, and now you're leading from the front.
Yes. And you have to think too, because a lot of men don't want to pay that cost for whatever reasons it may be, because they're like, well, my kids need me. And it depends on everybody's situation, right? I can't be a dictator of this. But when you buy yourself back, like you said, you also buy back a different version of a father, which is a representation of what a man should be in their lives, of what a partner should be in their lives. Because kids don't just watch what you say, they watch what you do, they feel your energy, they see how you interact with your spouse, they see how you interact with yourself. So if they're witnessing every day an empty, loveless, unfulfilling relationship, just in their subconscious brain, that's what they are observing is comfortable and safe for them. That's what they're likely going to get into when they get older. They'll make excuses for the type of man that you are. Like if you don't have respect for yourself as a man, then you're not doing well as a father. I just have to say that, because if you don't have respect for yourself as a man, your kids are looking up to you as a man.
Yeah.
And so you need to cultivate that respect in yourself so that you can say, would I want my daughter or son to be like me or to marry someone like me? And I hope you would say yes, or you're working on yourself to say yes. Sometimes we have that negative voice in our head that doesn't like ourselves. That's different, but try to be the best man that you possibly can. And can you do that in a relationship that's broken? Sometimes you just can't. And you have to give them the gift of showing them a different type of future.
Mm. Yeah, so true. And I guess you would just be perpetuating the same cycle that you went through. Like I'd imagine from my own experience, I'd have to really sit back and think about the the dynamic between my parents to find out, what part of that growing up cycle had me develop into the people pleaser type of person growing up. So I think yeah, I couldn't unpack it in this podcast, but I think it would be interesting to go through and find out where that sort of started. But what I was leading to was if you don't break that cycle, then it's just going to repeat through your children, and then you're going to see it. You're going to watch them marry someone who's not right for them, and then go through the pain and anguish that you had, and you could have solved that issue had you had just like changed yourself to change the environment around you. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said you had 3 kids. Can you imagine watching that happen 3 times?
Oh yeah. Fuck.
Like, imagine your kids going through your same, I don't know your relationship at all, but imagine your kids going through that same relationship, every single one of them. And if that's not enough, like if someone's listening to this and they're in a bad relationship and they hate what they're in, but they're staying together for the kids or whatever, however many kids you have, okay, now imagine them doing that and you have to sit there and watch and you can't stop them because their nervous system is going to gravitate towards what they feel is safe, and what they feel is safe is what they've grown up with, whether it's good for them or not.
Mm,
So if you don't want to see them go through it, then you have to pay the cost. The cost is you suffering with the breakup. The cost is you having to do the work, having to go to therapy, having to do the coaching. It sucks, but you doing it pays the cost for them not having to.
mm. Look, I can tell you from my perspective, having gone through a separation and a divorce, I think the going through it is the hardest part in terms of just making the decision. Like if you've ever been bungee
Mm-hmm.
jumping or if you ever dove off a high platform, it's just getting to the edge and taking the leap is the hardest part. Once you're done, like you're falling, you're through the sky, like it's nothing's going to stop you from that point. And I guess getting to that ledge is the most difficult part. The perspective that I use all the time, just in my own inner dialogue and within my coaching as well, is like it's my do-over opportunity. This is a time to recreate myself and the version that I like and I love and that I made myself. It wasn't influenced by anyone and anything else. So I think that's probably a large part of like what I can draw upon my experience growing up. I got married young, which I wanted, and I had kids when I was very young, which I also desired as well. Like I always wanted to be a young dad. But I think as a 20 something year old, you kind of look to go, if when I'm 45 or 50, I don't want to have a 2-year old child because I just don't want to be an old dad, I guess. Right. But like I'll be 46 in a couple of months. And I'm really like, yeah, this is just I guess tooting my own horn, but I feel really youthful and very energetic. Like I don't have any lack of energy and stamina and all those things and ability. I've doing the things that I was doing now at that 20 anyway. So like it's just not the case. So yeah, I think that approach of having the do-over opportunity and recreating yourself has an element of excitement about it because now you're creating, and I don't know how else to put it, but you're creating a life which is to me the most exciting and the most like drawing type of feeling that I've had, in such a long time. And the way that things are panning out is like now I understand who I want to attract into my life and what is in alignment, and what my values and beliefs are, and how people sort of align with all of those, as opposed to I love her, and she makes my heart sing, and my stomach giddy, and that must be the one. Like, do you understand where I'm going with that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, let's kick on. I would love to talk to the the I guess the childhood wounding. You mentioned at the start of the conversation that you healed a lot of your own childhood wounds and trauma and things like that. Can you tell me, like, if you don't mind sharing, what those things were? And I'd love to know, as a coach and someone who does work with men, particularly, and everything that I hear of you is like very much in a relational sort of leadership type of way, but it's also with a dynamic of relationships. How has your own experience with childhood trauma, your own relationships, how has that sort of shaped the way that you coach, or your paradigm of the world?
Yeah, so um, I am trauma therapy certified, and I did that because I wanted to understand my own upbringing. But instead of just saying trauma, I usually like to say behavior patterns, right? If something is going wrong in your life and you don't like it, it's probably caused by a subconscious behavior pattern that you don't understand. So, reprogramming a lot of trauma is also just reprogramming a lot of behavioral things. So, noticing what you do on repeat that you don't like, or the situations you get in repeat that you don't like. And I just noticed in relationships, I was very unhappy a lot of the time because I felt like I was always giving, 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 and I wasn't receiving. And instead of blaming it always on the other person, I'm a self reflective person. So I noticed I was sacrificing a lot of my needs and wants in order to do what made them happy, which translates into people pleasing and codependency. I never thought I was codependent, um, but that's what it is. And if you go back to the root cause, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, you have to look back at, like, how did I grow up? And my dad was constantly choosing my mom or my sisters over me. And so you develop this dynamic of, like, if I can just be enough, if I can just be enough, I can get their attention, I can get their love, because our parents are gods to us. So what I found with a lot of men was men aren't quite nurtured like women are growing up. And so they tend to have to do more or be more in order to be noticed, or in order to get a pat on the back. So they've just developed this mentality where it's this need to, like, do more, be more, solve the problem, fix the thing, so that they can earn that love. So they subconsciously end up attracting women who are emotionally unavailable, don't really have time for them, don't give them love or nurturing right away. Um, and they just want to do everything for these women, or they partner with women. I just made a post about this today, who need to be saved. Like, they don't have much going for them in life, or they're struggling with money, and they come in with this hero syndrome or white knight syndrome that says, holy crap, like, this is my chance. Like, they're not saying this consciously, but you say it internally. You're like, okay, I'm in a good place, I can help this woman, she's cute, she likes me, blah blah blah. But what you're doing is, like, now subconsciously you've taken on the father role. And just like a dad, as soon as you get her going in a good place, well, you've now raised her and she's ready to leave the nest, right? And a lot of men are so wounded by these partnerships because they've built this woman up, and they're, like, so hurt because she's left. But they don't realize that it's them who got in this dynamic because it's their own internal feeling of self-worth that isn't high enough. They're not asking for enough. They're coming at it like, I'm going to offer all of this stuff without understanding their values, where they're at, what they want, how they can be a good partner. And I'm just going to try to save them. So we have to kind of look at patterns like that if we want to start to break them.
Mm. When it comes to, like, your own patterns and things like that, have you ever been caught off guard? Like, has there ever been a relationship that kind of, like, even with your training and the information and knowledge that have you ever been in a situation where, I don't know, you're too close to the situation to realize what's going on? Maybe you're just sort of bamboozled in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. I mean, having all the knowledge that I do have almost bit me in the butt because I found out recently, like, because I've been doing this for 4 years. So I
Mm,
was in a relationship when I started learning all these things. And during that relationship, I was like, okay, taking more and more courses, thinking the more courses I took, the more skills I would have to try and fix that one. Newsflash, it did not fix it. And then I got into another one that was extremely toxic, red flags everywhere. Me ignoring the red flags, like knowing they were there, but just saying, we can figure this out. And once again, feeling so responsible because I had all this information. And I'm like, I'm a men's coach. I understand men. I understand what he needs. I know how to give him respect. But that's the thing is like, it doesn't matter how many tools you have, it doesn't matter how good you are. That was the inner child part of me, once again, trying to be good enough for dad. And this was the closest relationship that I'd ever had that resembled the relationship to my dad. It always comes up at some point. None of the other relationships were like this, but this one was. And it's like, finally, this was the one that had me realize, like, holy shit, I really do keep doing this. Um, I'm not having a standard. I'm just going for someone who chooses me, like chooses me because I want to be so badly chosen and so badly be number one and blah, 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 all this other stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think people can intellectualize all they want, their problems and their behavior patterns. But until you have like the actual knowing of like, oh, I am doing this, and then take actions to change that pattern, you're destined to repeat it until it finally sticks.
mm. And also the hardest part is it's almost like the obstacle is the way. The way to learn about, if you're conscious enough to know what those things are, the way to learn about that is to be in a relationship and go through those challenges. And whether
Yeah.
it comes out good or bad, right or wrong, that is the way. You can't sort of like sit in a room and study your your childhood wounds away. It's almost like it sneaks through the back door in some respects. It's sort of yeah, it's a really interesting play. I um
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind sharing me your perspective. There's a conversation that I've been having a lot lately, and it's been around the differentiation between meeting someone who gives you butterflies and you have that love, like I'm in love feeling, and she's the one or he's the one, type of emotions that are sort of coming up, versus consciously choosing someone who aligns with values and meets needs and all those sorts of things, and choosing that partner over the romantic fairy tale type of version of things. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I think once you become cognizant enough, like, I feel like the butterflies are what happen when we have extreme chemistry, but are maybe like a little bit still unaware of ourselves and what we're attracted to. I don't 100% believe that the butterflies are just anxiety, like a lot of people say. But one thing I am extremely firm on now is looking at facts over feelings. Feelings sweep us away. They sweep us away and they make us ignore red flags. They make us ignore all the things that we want. You have to go with facts. Yes, you have to be attracted to the person. Like you can't just like choose, oh, this guy is a good guy or this woman is a good woman. Like I'm going to go with them, even though I'm like so much more attracted to this person over here or whatever. Like you can't do that. You can't just choose someone only because they are a good fit. But start weighing your feelings with the facts. So like, do our values align? Do they do what they say they're going to do? Do they have good responsibility? Do they take care of themselves? And do I like them at the same time? And am I allowing my like to match the facts, right? I'm not just going to give them all of myself in the beginning. I'm not just going to give them all of my love and all of my desire in the beginning because I think that they're hot. Or, like they did one nice thing for me and now it's like, oh my God, like have they been consistent? And can I trust myself to build a consistent love and foundation with them? And that's why, even in my own dating life, I don't drink alcohol on dates, especially when first meeting people, and I don't sleep with people. Like allow yourself to experience that person when they are just their true selves and when they're not trying to have a means to an end.
Mm. Yeah, and also like you could just keep going because there's so much more to come out that could be a red or a green flag. You know, like in my experience, this is when we have difficult conversations, what do you do in that moment? Do you run away? Do you treat me like a piece of
Mm-hmm.
shit?
Mm-hmm.
Are you respectful? Like what is it that you do in the moments that are hard? And so,
Yes.
you want to see like I want to see your vulnerable side. I want to see like the worst side of you and just see if is that something that lasts a day, 2 days, a week? Are you stonewalling me for a month? Like, do you use sex as a tool to to
To
it's something
negotiate,
against me to
bargain.
negotiate shit like that? So all of a sudden, like you need to know that. And I think if you wanted to go even a step further, it'd be like, well, what do you like to be around all the time? Because there's a certain
Mm-hmm.
dynamic that I've come to really love is like being on my own. Yeah, so like you become single and then you're like, I didn't realize how much I love my own company or just being by myself and being able to do whatever the fuck I like. And so to have someone like come into my life, then you're like, well, does she allow me to have my own sovereignty and space and time, as well as do I want to be with her all the time? Or like how joyful enjoyment, like how much enjoyment is within that time together? Sometimes you can live in each other's pockets and it just becomes like, a bit too much. So there's huge dynamics at play. Do we live together? What's that experience like? Like there's so many stages and steps, to sort of like go through. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in that perspective. And I think you've outlined a few things there that certainly make sense because when you talk about like the butterflies and the feelings and the attractiveness and the chemistry, I mean, shit, if there's really good connection outside of the bedroom, but not inside the bedroom, well, then you've kind of got like a best friend. And if it's just in the bedroom and it's not outside, then you just got a booty call, so to speak. So I'd probably said that wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. No, you have to weigh those things. That's why it's like delay some gratification. Delay some gratification so you can see who people are. If someone's just trying to rush you right away, let's spend every day together, let's move in together, let's sleep together, and you're feeling like a little bit this is going too fast. I mean, some people they like meet and they're like, you're the one, I want to get married, and they like live 15 years ago. I'm not doubting that. That's actually what I want to do. I don't date. I'm just hoping someone, sees me on the street and proposes right there.
Huh.
Um, that's how I want it to go down.
Yeah.
But you have to like measure your own feeling of safety and say, do I feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable with this person? This is something really good for men. Can I tell this woman something about myself, and how does she respond? So this is how men can start to approach vulnerability with the women that they choose. Start off small, start off with something that, if it gets used against you or something, you're not going to be upset. Like, don't just start off with the most traumatic shit you've ever had happen to you in your life, and then it gets brought up in an argument, and then you never want to do it again. Start with something small, like, oh, I have this insecurity about wearing sweatpants. Okay. And then if she brings it up in an argument later, where it's like, and you look fat in sweatpants, you're like, okay, now I know, fact over feeling. She is not going to respect the things that I tell her, and she's going to use them against me. But if she's like, oh my God, no, you look so hot in sweatpants, and like, I bought you this pair, like, like then okay, like now you can tell her deeper stuff. And so the problem isn't with men being vulnerable. It's like, who have I chosen to be vulnerable with? So
Yeah.
stop weighing your decisions as completely wrong all the time and start seeing how people respond to who you are.
Mm. And see, I think what resonates the most about that too is like a lot of the coaching that I do when it comes to relationships and things like that is I say you got to understand yourself. You got to understand the inner knowings, the inner workings of what goes on. So all the things about attachment styles and childhood wounds and love languages, like they're all key things to sort of at least have an awareness of. And then, like you rightfully said, when you see the different responses and alignments and in alignments with your partner, you can't, once you know yourself, you can't unknow those things. You can't unlearn it. And so
Yes.
in that moment when you see a red flag, it's like that's the red flag. You were waiting for a sign. That's the sign. And then the natural, well, it's almost like unnatural to say something about it because I think we've been taught to just sweep things under the rug and just, wait for a better day. Or let's just downplay this thing as a small thing and not really worry about it because it's not that great a deal. But I think having the courage to kind of raise the red flag and then say, hey, this is something that I told you in confidence. You've used it against me, and this is how you made me feel. And then once again, you've got another layer of like, what do they do? Do they go, well, it's because you did this, and then they all of a sudden
Yeah.
blame,
Do they justify it?
yeah, justified, or do they say, you know what, I never realized that I did that. I'm so sorry. And next
Right.
time, and now we've got rules of engagement, and I think all
Yes.
of that in terms of just having an understanding and a knowing and a conversation and being open towards the goal of like, I want to make this work and gel. I kind of want to know how you operate and how you tick. And I want you to know my playbook as well, because once we kind of know the answers, like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember back at school, you have all the answers at the back of the book. So, it's almost like you've got all the answers at the back of the book. And now we have the best shot of making this a dynamic and beautiful relationship and experience, life experience.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think what you brought up is so important to for ourselves to bring up what makes us uncomfortable, because sometimes people see a red flag and sometimes it's totally worth it to just cut them off, not have to explain it. By But if you really like someone, sometimes it's worth it to say, hey, what you said really upset me. That's not something I accept in my relationships. And see their reaction. If they're like, well, I just did that because you did this, okay, that's another red flag. They have justification. They're not willing to have empathy for your perspective. But if they do say, like said, like, oh my God, like, I'm so glad that you brought that up, I didn't realize I was doing that. And this is the key component of apologies. And this is how you know if someone is being genuine about their apologies. Next time I will do XYZ to make sure it doesn't happen again. If someone just says, oh, I'm so sorry, and they don't try to make amends with how they're going to correct their behavior, that's what leaves us feeling like they're not genuine. They don't really mean it. But it's also, if you're not used to red flags or conflict resolution, you might accept it still, but they'll repeat the pattern because they're not showing care enough to change their own behavior. They just want to sweep it under the rug to make you stop talking about it. So be very cognizant of making sure there's an action plan to avoid the behavior for the next time. And sometimes it takes a couple times if they mess up, depending on how big the red flag is. But like someone says, they cheat on you and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I won't do that next time. Like, okay, but no, like they made a conscious decision, right? And sometimes people make it through those things, but most of the time they've made a conscious decision to break that trust. And like, yeah,
Mm.
like there are different types of red flags, right?
Yeah, 100%. But I guess, getting to the habit of at least bringing things to the surface and dealing with it, it's such a load off your shoulders. Like you just feel so much freer by just getting it out of the way and moving forward. It creates the bond. It creates a deeper connection. I think what people are desiring is that deeper inner knowing connection type of feeling and relationship, but they don't realize that by sweeping the dust away and moving some rocks around, and clearing a path is the way to the deeper connection. And that takes, a bit of courage and a bit of intestinal fortitude to, speak up, speak your truth, and both be in a position where we can at least have an understanding of one another. And like all of those things you mentioned, I think they're all green flags, in terms of the next time I'll do this, and this is how I can change my behavior to
Mm-hmm.
understand that this is a trigger for you, or this is something that, you don't like in relationships. So yeah, I think that that's super powerful. Look, in wrapping this up, I know that my audience is almost like, I don't know, 55, 45, 55% women, 45% men, something like that. A lot of people are in a similar age bracket, 35 to 55. They're all in this sort of era these days. I don't know if you agree with me that in the last couple of years, particularly since like the pandemic and all the shifts that are happening in the world, people are sort of at a precipice where they need to choose. I don't know, they're at a fork in the road where they need to choose like road A or road B. and they're starting to recreate themselves. But for the men that are listening, do you have like a protocol or something that they can do in terms of taking steps and actions towards becoming that leader and that sovereign man, and understanding his feelings, but also being in his truth and being not vulnerable to the point of being shamed or ridiculed? Like he can kind of like step forward. Do you have any kind of like tips and tricks or things that you recommend?
Absolutely. I mean, the first place to start, like you said, is to start creating the respect and integrity for yourself. So start doing what you say you're going to do, even the little things. Like if I said I was going to take out the trash, take out the trash. If I say I'm going to the gym, go to the gym. If I say I'm going to start losing weight, start doing those things, because a man is his word. And if you can't trust yourself, you won't trust yourself as a leader. You start to lose respect for yourself. And those things compound, but they compound in the good way as well. So if you start even doing little things, I do what I say I'm going to do, you start having the self-confidence, the self-respect that allows you to do bigger things. And to touch on what you just said, avoiding the shame of being vulnerable. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes people will judge you and they will shame you, but once again, that's not your problem. That's when we need to continue building the respect for ourselves to drop caring about other people's perspective on if they think we shouldn't say something about our own story, about our own lives. That's none of their business. When you start to become your own self, you will encounter people who do not like it. But you will also encounter many people who do and many people who appreciate it. It's just finding that balance of who deserves to hear my story and who doesn't, because not everybody is someone you need to tell your story to. Really, only the people that matter. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Where can people go to find out more about you and your work that you do, your courses, your membership, and all those sorts of things?
Anybody can find me at Elise Micheals, Micheals. Would love to have people in the men's group. And this is a special offer for you and your podcast. If any man wants to join, he can join the first month at only $9.99 if he types in the code first month. So
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. Hey, Elise, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I want to give credit to you and the work that you do. I think a lot of your posts, like some I find like quite funny and quirky and things like that, which is great and entertaining. But I think your perspective is very level-headed, and it's certainly been a source of inspiration for me over the last 12 or so months that I've been following you. So I appreciate you and thank you for your work, and hopefully we can circle back sometime and have another chat.
awesome, Adrian. Thank you so much for having me on. If you ever need anything, let me know. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Okay.
Thank you so much. All right.
All
Talk to you
right.
soon.
Bye bye.
Bye now.